Cuba sets all the details ahead of next school year to start on September the 5th. In Indonesia, at least 10 people died after a cargo truck at a bus stop in front of an elementary school crashed. A mission from the International Atomic Energy Agency arrived at Zaporizhzhya nuclear power plant to inspect the situation on the ground. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. In Cuba, President Miguel Díaz-Canel announced the resumption of the classes, at a meeting held on Tuesday to review arrangements for the next school year. President Díaz-Canel, Prime Minister Manuel Marrero, and Vice Prime Minister Jorge Luis Perdomo, along with education officials at all levels, reviewed details ahead of next school year to start next September the 5th. They discussed topics such as increasing enrollment at vocational schools, given current realities in the country, and ways of connecting study and work. They also reviewed logistical issues and the role of student federations. Education Minister Ana Elsa Velázquez gave an account on the tour her ministry has done throughout the country.
The ministry has just made a tour of provinces in the country. We visited more than 400 institutions for 5 municipalities, and we have first-hand knowledge of the situation in each place. I could not say at this moment that everything is ready to resume classes because arrangements are being made until the very last minute.
Brazil's far-right president Jair Bolsonaro and his family have purchased 107 pieces of real estate, according to a national media's report. All of that while the nation has a housing shortage of over 6 million units, so popular anger is growing. From Pernambuco, our correspondent Brian Muir tells us more.
Brazil's 1988 constitution guarantees the right to dignified housing for all citizens. Nevertheless, according to recent studies, there's over 6 million families who have lack of access to this basic human right. This is why indignation is growing at a report by the Brazilian news medium UOL that since first entering Congress in 1988, far-right President Jair Bolsonaro and his immediate family have acquired over 107 pieces of real estate. And to make things worse, 25 of these transactions have been under investigation from the police, and 51 of them were made with cash payments, which is generally considered to be a sign of illicit money. All this comes at a time when the country is under a temporary stay on evictions, as 33 million people have dropped below the poverty line. The stay on evictions is going to end after the elections, and it's expected that hundreds of thousands of additional families will be out on the streets, will be forced to live in shacks like these ones you see behind me here in Santa Cruz, in the backcountry of Lula's home state of Pernambuco.
Now we move on to other topics. Sanitary standards have worsened in Mississippi, southern United States, due to a water shortage caused by the floods, to the point that a state of emergency has been declared there. On Tuesday, the situation hit a new low. Jackson, the capital city, has no drinkable water, nor water for general use. The city pumps broke and more than 160,000 people have been left without drinking water, or water to flush toilets or extinguish the fires. The heavy floods that hit the southern part of the country have caused a lot of damage in the city. Governor Tate Reeves said this near total loss of water pressure has created a disaster situation, and it poses extreme danger to the safety of people and property. Mississippi, with a large African American population, has had problems with the water supply for years. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari said on Tuesday 500,000 Nigerians have been affected by floods caused by heavy rains since the start of the year. 23 of Africa's most populous countries, 36 states, are affected by seasonal flooding, with the northeastern states particularly hard hit this year. Buhari's office said emergency services were providing aid, and he was receiving regular updates on the floods, which have affected more than 500,000 Nigerians since January this year. In Maiduguri, the regional capital of northeast Borno State, people displaced by conflict have seen their farms and homes destroyed by flooding. Flooding is common in many parts of Nigeria during the rainy season, which runs from May to September. A decade ago, Nigeria suffered disastrous floods across most of its states, leaving hundreds dead and more than 2 million homeless.
For the past 8 years, we haven't farmed the land, but this year we did, but we have been very unfortunate. The floods came and destroyed all our farms.
This water came with heavy force. It destroyed over 30 houses and killed many, mostly children.
Bolivian Minister of Health, Jason Auza, announced the optional use of face masks in open spaces after the easing of other biosecurity measures as the country faces a reduction in COVID-19 cases, which in the last week decreased by 34% compared to the previous one. In his weekly report about the pandemic, the minister stated that to move forward with the new measures, the government took into consideration the reduction in cases and the containment of the disease mortality rate, that in the last peak was 0.1%. Among the new provisions taken was also the mandatory use of face masks in closed spaces, keeping the continuous working hours system as well as remote working, along with actions to increase vaccination. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. Chile commemorates the International Day Against Forced Disappearance. Around 100 people mobilized to Palacio de la Moneda and the courts to demand truth and justice for the more than 1,000 detainees disappeared in that country during the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet. The demonstrators made this tour throughout the main streets of the Chilean capital, carrying the faces of the victims of the state, highlighting that 49 years after these events, still the military and the civilian accomplices of Pinochet refused to reveal what happened to their victims.
It cannot be that we are consolidated ex post facto about what we have and what is being done. That camera is in brief words, so that in our commitment we are tireless, and hopefully our bodies are tireless. But it is not so, not to biological impunity, truth and justice, all now and always.
In the United States, about 100 people gathered outside the South Carolina State House on Tuesday, chanting phrases like "my body, my right," and drawing honks from passing cars. The South Carolina House appeared ready to vote on Tuesday on a new total ban on abortion, with no exceptions for pregnancies caused by rape or incest, as Democrats joined with the chamber's most conservative members to keep the bill as restrictive as possible. Many Republicans accused Democrats of playing politics as they joined conservatives to also vote down an amendment supporters said will allow abortions for women carrying fetuses with medical problems, leaving them unlikely to be born alive. 13 states have so-called triggered laws designed to outlaw mass abortions when the U.S. Supreme Court threw out the constitutional right to end a pregnancy in June. With the attendance of more than 1,400 domestic and foreign companies, the International Fair on Trade in Services begins this Wednesday in China. The event will be held from August 31st to September 5th in Beijing, the country's capital. The exhibition, which is divided into thematic areas related to telecommunications, computing, finance, information, sports, and tourism, includes academic forums and conferences in which reports on the performance of the industry and services are presented. In the current context of supply crisis and other challenges, the fair, known as FTS, one of the most important in the world, becomes an important reference center. South Korea and the United States held live fire exercises near the border with North Korea on Wednesday as part of yearly combined military training that began around a week ago. Both nations conducted live fire drills in Pyongyang involving battle tanks, helicopters, and mortars, along with hundreds of troops of the U.S. Army and the Air Force and the South Korean Army. In the country's eastern city of Gangwon, U.S. and South Korean troops participated in live fire drills of multiple launch rocket systems. The East Asian nation and the U.S. have been staging the All-Chi Freedom Shield exercise since August 2022. Northern European Union countries call on Wednesday for the 27-nation bloc to impose a broad ban on tourist visas for Russian citizens, insisting that the issue is a matter of national security as the conflict in Ukraine continues. But at the meeting of EU foreign ministers in the Czech capital, Prague, other member countries like France, Germany, and Belgium argued that it is important not to punish Russian people who may need to enter Europe for humanitarian purposes. The bloc already tightened visa restrictions on Russian officials and business people in May. European nations farther from Russia and Ukraine's borders are reluctant to go too far, and it appears they will simply agree to use the 2007 agreement to make it more time-consuming and costly for Russian citizens to get a visa. A truck transporting iron on the outskirts of Indonesia's capital on Wednesday crashed at a bus stop in front of a school and killed at least 10 people, most of them elementary students. The children were waiting for a ride home after finishing classes when the truck smashed into a bus stop on the main road connecting the Bekasi area and East Jakarta. There were about 20 students at the scene, and those who were injured were taken to 2 hospitals. The truck also hit a telecommunications pole that fell down and crashed motorbikes and a pickup that was crossing the road. Police detained the driver of the truck as part of the investigation into the cause of the accident. teleSUR will dedicate its coverage of the Football World Cup Qatar 2022 to the figure of Diego Armando Maradona, who accompanied our crew in the last 2 World Cups. With the football star, we also toured our continent with the show The Zurda Viajero. We want this tribute to have its own music. With that in mind, we invite you to write or compose a song for teleSUR's coverage of Qatar 2022 Football World Cup. It must be an original song, never recorded before or published in any media, and free of legal attachments. Record the song in any format, WAV, MP3, even with your cell phone, and send it as an attachment to comunicaciones@telesurtv.net with the following information: author's name, nationality, and the title of the song. The closing date of the call for entries is September 10th, 2022. A jury of prestigious musicians and composers from the region will select the winning piece. The prize will be the recording of the song, a video clip, and the wide diffusion of the work. 1 week after the closing of the call, teleSUR will announce the results. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. On Wednesday, a mission from the International Atomic Energy Agency arrived at the Zaporizhzhya nuclear power plant to inspect the situation on the ground. The agency director, Rafael Grassi, stated that the mission of scientists and technicians plans to spend several days at the plant, as his organization hopes to create a permanent representation in Zaporizhzhya. He also said that it was extremely necessary to protect the safety and security of Ukraine's and Europe's biggest nuclear facility, and that the visit aims to generate information that allows the international body to develop an assessment of the nuclear safety and security risks. Russia's Gazprom company stopped the flow of natural gas through a major pipeline from Russia to Europe on Wednesday, a temporary move announced in advance. The Russian state-owned multinational energy corporation said earlier this month that it will cut the flow of gas through the Nord Stream 1 pipeline until Saturday, as part of a 3-day pause for routine maintenance at a compressor station located at the Portovaya Bay, 150 kilometers northwest of St. Petersburg. Iran's Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian met with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in Moscow. The meeting happened at the Russian Foreign Ministry on Wednesday, and the two sides discussed issues of mutual interest at regional and international levels. The top diplomats, while explaining the latest state of bilateral relations, emphasized the need for comprehensive expansion of cooperation and interactions between the two countries in all areas. They discussed other issues like preparing the ground for a joint economic commission, strengthening interactions regarding trade, economy and energy, and also paving the way for the promotion of cultural and consular cooperation, as well as working together in the fight against COVID-19. This Wednesday, the deadline granted by Kenya's Supreme Court to the Electoral Authority to finalize the count authorized to lawyers of former Prime Minister Raila Odinga concludes after inspecting the servers and the ballot boxes. The Supreme Court ordered Kenya's Independent Electoral Commission to provide Odinga's lawyers with ballot boxes from 15 polling stations. The recount is due to be completed today, as unanimously agreed by the 7 members of the Supreme Court. Last August 22nd, Raila Odinga, who was running for the 5th time in a presidential election, challenged the result when William Ruto won with more than 50% of the votes. 4 of the 7 members of the Electoral Commission subsequently stated that the result had been opaque. And now we have information from Southeast Africa. At least 19 people have died in Madagascar in protests over the kidnapping of a child. Defense Minister Richard Rakonontrinya explained that in Como, in the southeast of the country, dozens of people tried to lynch 4 suspects arrested for the murder of a mother who tried to save her albino son from a kidnapping. When they tried to enter, the guards opened fire indiscriminately. The deputy, Jean Brunel, assures that there are 23 dead because there are no means to attend to the wounded. The Minister of Defense informed that the wounded will be transferred to the capital. He also said that in the state of law, no one can take justice into its own hands. Environment officials from the world's 20 major developed and emerging economies, G20, gathered on Wednesday in Indonesia's resort island of Bali for talks to prompt global climate action and other issues. The one-day meeting aimed at implementing each G20 nation's contribution and synchronizing targets among developing and developed countries. It also focused on producing a joint agreement with 3 priority issues: sustainable recovery, land-based and ocean-based climate action, as well as resource mobilization, and to realize the Paris Agreement, the first universal and legally binding commitment on climate change. Indonesian government Minister Siti Nurbaya opened the meeting by urging fellow environment ministers to safeguard environmental multilateralism and to make it work, as it is the only way to effectively coordinate the efforts to tackle global challenges. Malaysia on Wednesday celebrated its 65th National Day with a parade through Merdeka Square in the capital Kuala Lumpur. The parade featured various military and governmental institutions and attracted thousands of spectators. Many people were happy that such an event was possible after 2 years of pandemic restrictions on public events. The Southeast Asian country is expected to hold general elections soon following current Prime Minister Ismail Sabri Yaqub's intentions to dissolve the parliament. The continued military presence of the United States in Syria has dragged the country into unprecedented economic crisis and is the fundamental source of continuous deterioration of the country's economy and livelihood. In August, the U.S. troops stationed in Syria used more than 700 tankers to carry out stolen oil from the northeastern part of the country and cross the border to the U.S. military bases in Iraq, directly putting Syria in a severe energy shortage. Several experts have pointed out that Washington has frequently plundered Syria's resources to gain economic interests and force its government to make political decisions in favor of the United States. The Syrian Foreign Ministry confirmed that oil piracy committed by the illegal presence of the U.S. troops have caused losses of $107.1 billion to the country's oil, natural gas, and mineral industries since 2011. teleSUR English continues to grow. Its signal now reaches Europe. You can order it from your cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on the screen are in place since July 1st. Quite soon, further changes will be implemented for the signals in the Middle East and Africa. Now, more than ever, the world connects to us, and our stories are heard in other farther away nations. This news multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and our faithfulness to our audience. And now we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. And now you can also follow us on TikTok account at teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. For teleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.